All righty, welcome back to Millennial Thermom. Today I'm excited. We're going to be having a great conversation with Juan Carlos. I can already feel it. We're going to talk about fatherhood, maybe a little bit of postpartum, and so much more. So thank you so much for being here, Juan Carlos. Can you share? Let's just like jump in, and can you just share a little bit about yourself and some of the roles that you hold?
Yeah, beautiful. First off, thank you for having me. I'm excited to chat and share some medicine. My name is Juan Carlos. I am the founder of the Modern Macho. I get to support fathers in their journey of growth and help men dive deeper into their truths. I am the oldest of three, first generation. My parents are from Mexico City. I was born and raised in California, and your typical story of a man brought up in a very machista home. I was brought up with my goal being to work really hard to make a lot of money so that I could eventually be loved and be deserving of just anything in life. And so, yeah, graduated high school, was going to go to college for the sake of going to college just to get my parents off my back. I had good grades, but it was really just to not get in trouble, not because I was really interested or cared to educate myself. And yeah, decided after doing community college that I was going to jump into a trade. So I got into the electrical industry, received my license. I did a 5-year apprenticeship program to the union, got my license, and then I became initiated, you could say, in that season of life into the trade, into masculinity, into what I was able to see it, which was construction, which was drugs, which was alcohol, which was all the things that I needed in order to be loved and accepted by the men that I surrounded myself with. Found out I was going to be a father at 20. And that really flipped things for me because now I had to see a lot of the mirrors and a lot of the things that I told myself that didn't matter anymore, or that were just going to get buried and I was going to take to the grave without knowing that subconsciously all those things were running my life and were running all my decisions and the way that I was coping with things. And so it was in about maybe 2019 where just a pivotal point of drinking. The same cycle happening over and over again. And I think I just became very exhausted and I realized something had to change. So I decided to go to therapy, and therapy really opened my eyes to a whole different world. And it made me realize that there was a lot of cultural awareness that was missing. I think the intention behind the therapy was beautiful, and my therapist was doing her best with what she knew. But there was a lot of disconnections that I just didn't have support on. I didn't know where to run, and so I created a platform as a way to document the journey. Me and my best friend started a podcast, and we were like, "What does it mean to be a man? And what kind of man do I really want to be? More importantly." And through that, started doing men's work as well. Helped out with volunteering for a few years in a nurturing fathers program in Riverside, where it was just a very humbling experience to see and learn that men are showing up, that fathers are making the efforts with the tools that they have, and they're going to lengths that I never imagined possible.
Mhm.
And it was very beautiful to witness. It really, I think, inspired something in me to continue to do my own work as well as to surround myself with more men that are wanting and willing to show up, you know?
Mhm.
Um, and that brings me here now where I get to, one of the roles, like I said, is as a facilitator. So as a facilitator, I get to provide spaces for men to show up authentically. Oftentimes we have to wear masks, we have to perform, or we feel the need to perform. And so to provide a space where we can take all that off, show up as ourselves, is really powerful, and it's an honor that I get to do this. I'm also a father to my 11-year-old boy now. I am a
Mhm.
co-parent. I am a brother, the oldest of three, and I also still work in the electrical industry as well. So I get to work as a foreman, sitting in the office, managing projects and putting prices together. So I'm blessed and grateful to be able to do what I do and to show up for my community in the way that I do.
Awesome. Yeah, I really appreciate you being on here. I feel like there's so many ways that we can go, but I think just stepping back, I think there's one of the things that I'm just so grateful to be able to do is supporting new parents because I think that for the most part, I think that sometimes like when a couple has a baby, they don't anticipate all the big shifts that are going to happen, right? Like you fall in love or you get together and you are one version of yourself. But one thing that I've learned in postpartum is that everybody goes through an identity shift when they become a parent. Like there is just this like becoming process. And there is like now there are terms for it, like for the mamas, matrescence, for the fathers, putrescence. But I think that there is so much of like trying to cling on to who we used to be or who our partner used to be like, well, they weren't ever like this. And there is not enough like growing together alongside each other and being like, oh, snaps. Like we're parents now. What does that mean for you? What does that mean for me? Like, and then like that's the deeper heart work, right? Like the hard heart work of what models am I bringing when it comes to motherhood or fatherhood? I know like I'm also first gen Latina, so I think the there's machismo and then there's Marianismo, right? Where it's like they can sometimes like support each other in unhealthy patterns. And it's like, okay, well, I'll self-sacrifice everything and like burn myself out to take care of these kids. And then the father will to be out of the house all day long, making sure that he provides. And it's like, why does that like we get to question like, is that how we want to? Like my husband and I, is that how we want to? Or is it like, no, actually, I'm not gonna burn myself out. Like, you're also gonna help me parent this child. You know? And there's so much research, like you're saying, like we are in a generation where we're starting to see the effects, like the positive effects of children being raised with their father's also love and presence, with their attunement, with their care, with their like lovingness that maybe some of us didn't see modeled. So we
Hmm.
really get to step back and be like, okay, maybe there are some wounds from my past or some templates from my past, and what do I want to bring forward? And now it like it sometimes makes me tear up because I was raised by a single mom, and I sometimes wonder like I don't know what the origin story really was of my parents, right? And like, did my dad feel like, well, taking care of the babies is not my job, you know, like that's the mom's job. But now I see my daughter playing with my husband, and like they just have such a beautiful bond that I'm like, oh, I'm so proud of like what we're creating. But I also know it's taking work from the both of us to for me to release some of that parenting control and being like, you are also the parent, you know,
Mm.
like I would try to trust you. And also I don't have to be it all, right? I don't have to be the only one who parents. So there's just so many things I feel like that we can talk about. But just to start off, maybe we could just jump into your fatherhood. So what has fatherhood taught you so far? And if there's anything else from what I said that you feel like connects with that.
Yeah, I mean, before jumping into that, I think like what I really resonated with, and I think is really important to emphasize, is what we want that to look like for ourselves.
Mhm.
Because like you said, I think oftentimes because of the way we've been brought up, there's these there's these masks and these roles that oftentimes we feel we're expected to do rather than choosing to do.
Mhm.
And I think now more than ever, as you mentioned, the research shows that fathers are showing up more than they ever have, right? And so I think the question is less about are we showing up and more about how are we showing up?
Mhm.
And I've been guilty of that, right? Where I
Mhm.
could say, yeah, I get off work and I'm home from 4 o'clock to my kid goes down at 9, 10, right?
Mhm.
And then I've had to ask myself, well, what does that look like though, right? Because
Mhm.
I know
Mhm.
that I've, in the past, I've sat down and scrolled for 5 of those hours.
Mhm.
So I've been a lot more present than maybe I ever experienced growing up. And now what does that look like, right? Um, and to answer your question, I think before talking about how we're showing up and all that things too, it really comes down, and I think the most important piece, as you mentioned, is what kind of father are we wanting to be,
Mhm.
right? Because I can tell you right now, if I just want to be a father that's just in the room with my son, then me being on my phone all day is in alignment. And
Mhm.
that works,
Yeah.
right? Because to your point, who gets to dictate that? That was my question is like, who said that? Well, why
Mhm.
do I have to do that? Why do I have to, really being curious about where does this come from? And
Mhm.
if me and my partner have built something where our values align, why do I feel like I have to perform based on what's being said? Why do I feel like I have to let myself go? Like I have to sacrifice myself in order to make others happy, even though deep inside maybe I feel very resentful.
Mhm.
Why? And so, for
Mhm.
me, one of the things that I was very very adamant about was breaking the cycle as far as being very compassionate,
Mhm. Mhm.
a father that's compassionate, a father that's forgiving,
Mhm.
a father that listens. And when I say listen, I mean being able to hold space, being able
Mhm.
to truly understand what's being said without taking anything personally.
Mhm.
One of the things that I wanted to do different was no physical contact, as far as like no abuse. right?
Mm-hmm.
No spanking, no putting hands on my kid, whether it's as simple as a pinch or, a knock on the head, whatever it might be. I told myself that that was not something that I wanted to do,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then new things that I wanted to bring to the table for me was just being vulnerable, being open, allowing my son to see me. And that
Mm-hmm.
can be scary. That can be very, very scary because there's also a fine line between making sure that my intention is not to parentify or to make my son responsible for my emotions. It is opportunities for him to see the humanness in me. Because I
Mm-hmm.
look back and I think there's times where I struggle and there's times where I'm having a hard ass time doing things that I need to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about it would have been nice to have been able to witness my father in those moments. I
Mm-hmm.
know he has it. I know he's got it. I know he can do it. And I think knowing that I could have had a moment of vulnerability where I see him going through it and saying, yo, I just need a moment to break down and cry because
Mm-hmm.
that's what gives me the capacity to continue to show up in the way that I do with love. I mean, that would have probably just like, even just thinking about it
Yeah.
right now is like
Yeah.
wild, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so, easier said than done. It's definitely been an edge for me, allowing my son to see me fully, right? But yeah, those are some of the things that for me as a father have been very important, and I ground myself and go back to, especially when I get put in pickles or I get put in these situations where I'm like, how do I handle this? How do I
Mm-hmm.
do this? Or things that sometimes trigger me, and I go, okay, well, is that in the loving way that I want to be as a father? And I go, okay, well, how can we make it look that way, right? And
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I think also something very important is that I get to be human at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always working on it. This is not about perfection. I think it's just about having better tools. And one thing that one of my mentors always says is it's about how quickly you can bring yourself back to honor.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I
When I
like
make
that.
those mistakes, that rather than being weeks, months at a time of pretending like I didn't make a mistake, of being able to say, you know what, I, I didn't handle that correctly. And I'm going to own it because it's the kind of man and the kind of father that I want to be. And then moving forward.
Yeah, I love that. It's truly, I think a shared value that we have is that compassion, right? Like, how do I
Mm,
move from compassion versus like my anger or my anxiety or my fears in parenting? Because I think that unfortunately, I always talk about like who's driving the car, right? Sometimes
mm,
because of our survival responses, like for me in the past, anxiety has driven the car. It's been like, okay, well, if you don't do this, then this. Well, what if this, then this? But I've learned like, and you have to pay attention to your body, right? Like the somatics of it, like, ooh, like I am starting to feel my heart race. I'm nervous. Like, then that being I guess a space to welcome in that pause. And I remember I forget exactly who said it, but between stimulus and the response, there is a space. In that space is our ability to choose, and in that
oof.
choice is our freedom. It's a much better quote than how I said it, but there is like that space is so important. And it's like, okay, how do I want to respond? Like I mean, a very easy example is I have a 2.5-year-old. She's forever, and she is the bravest 2.5-year-old I have met. But she will do things like climb things that I'm like, that's for big kids, 9-year-old, 10-year-olds, right? But in the playground, I don't want to be like, oh no, you're too small, or like, stop, get down, right? Instead, I want to be like a compassionate parent. I'm here for you, but also one that encourages her and doesn't limit her. So I have to take so many deep breaths. I joke with my friends, like I was a therapist before having her, but nothing has made me deep breathe like having my daughter be my daughter. Because I have to breathe and be like, okay, let's hold on tightly. Let's one step in front of the other. And like that co-regulation, right? Like, all right, we're doing this. But I hope that she senses that when she's older. I'm sure she will. But it is like, otherwise, if I don't pause and I can just be like, just parent her out of my fear and my anxiety, which is so easy um, in our world to do that. So I don't know. I
Yeah.
think it's, yeah, really being able to step back and be like, how am I parenting? What is important for me now? And I guess a question related to that is, I mean, you said your son is 11 now. When do you feel like things started clicking for you in that, ooh, I have to do some internal work?
Yeah, it's a beautiful question. So, it was probably when he was around, geez, I want to say four or
Okay.
five-ish. I just remember I picked him up. I was picking him up from school. So this was again, I had just started therapy,
Mhm.
and really, to be honest with you, I think at that point it was just a desperate call for help. I don't even think I was making the deep connections and had the awareness and was consciously thinking about all this stuff.
Mhm.
Um, but I received a call from school. My son had apparently punched someone in the stomach.
Mhm.
And so they called and they said, "Hey, you can pick him up." So I was driving my way there, and I just remember feeling all types of ways about it. Looking back now, I felt embarrassed. I
Mhm.
felt upset. And I think I felt pressured. I felt pressured into the school just called you. You are the dad. Like you have to do something, you know?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so I was moving out of pressure. I was moving out of embarrassment and I was moving out of this anger. And I remember driving to the school and just thinking, like, all right, well, we're going to go home. I'm going to spank him. I'm going to let him know that we don't do that. And that's going to fix the problem. But there was something deep inside that was telling me, you're going to teach your kid not to hit people by hitting him.
Mhm.
Some didn't make sense.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, just that whole it was a long drive. I remember I called. I was like talking to my mom at the time, and so um, I just happened to bring it up, and she was like, "Mijo, make sure that you're patient. Don't take his toys away." And I just remember feeling even more rage, right?
Mhm.
Because my mind just went into, "You were the one that was hitting me all the like." Right? If you loved me so
Mhm.
much and you gave me this tool that was so good for me, why would you not want to do it to your grandkid?
Mhm.
Right? If that
Yeah.
was such a loving thing that did benefit me and made me a better person, why would we not do it again? This doesn't make sense. So it was just a lot of feelings that were coming up for me. And
Mhm.
so when the shift truly happened in that moment was I remember picking my son up and I said, "Hey, obviously we got a call from school. What's going on?" And talking of energies, like I just remember seeing his fingers fidgeting, his breath,
Mhm.
things started shifting. And I saw myself.
Mhm.
I saw myself, that boy that instantly was like, "Oh snaps, we just made a mistake. We just did something wrong." And I remember something that my therapist had told me was that we are not naturally liars. We're not born
Mhm.
liars, right? We learn to lie over time to protect ourselves.
Mhm.
And I remember her telling me, when your kid's being honest with you, be careful not to fuck that up. Those are her exact words, right?
Mhm.
Like we had built that relationship. She said, "Don't screw it up. Don't fuck it up." And I just,
Mhm.
in that moment, I picked my son up. I noticed this like anxiousness in him. I see myself, and he says, "Yeah, I punched someone in the stomach." And it was like her voice just came in the back of like, "Okay, Carlos, how are you going to handle this?" Because he's being
Mhm.
honest with you, and this could be an opportunity to connect, to build more trust, or it could be an opportunity to really damage that trust. And yeah, that's when the shift, the pivot kind of started for me, and I was like, well, let me go ahead and let me just I put myself in that position. I thought, well, have I hurt people? And I thought I have, and I've done actionable items to change that, right? So I said, well, let's maybe just write a letter. That came to me in that moment, was like, let's
Mhm.
just write a letter and apologize for what you did, and then moving forward, you don't hit the kid. That sounds fair. That sounds like a real thing, that can
Mhm.
actually happen. So we went home in the worst handwriting for like 3 hours. He wrote these two sentences that just said, "I'm sorry that I hurt you and I love you," or something like that, right? And, Jojo, you brought up something really important about the somatic piece, the way our body holds on to these things, right? Because although logically I knew that what I was doing was better because I had read it, because I had processed it with my therapist, there was a somatic aspect of my body that was not connected with that logic.
Mhm.
So after that moment happened and I put my son down, I drank
Mhm.
and I drank and I drank because it was so uncomfortable what I was feeling in my body. I felt like I failed as a father because
Mhm.
what do you mean I process things with my son?
Mhm.
Right? Like I wasn't quote unquote strong enough as a father to just spank him, get it like this should have
Mhm.
been fixed within a minute. It should have been, "Hey, you did this, you're spanked, we're done, not going to happen again." Like, why did you just spend these 2 3 hours doing this? You're clearly not a capable father. Now I had to sit with all those thoughts and those emotions, and to be honest, I don't think I had the tools or the capacity at the time, and so I drank myself to sleep.
Mhm.
And um, a few couple days later went by, and my son said, "Hey, oh, by the way," he goes, "I got a letter back," which threw me off. I was like, "What?" And So I was like, oh, so how did it go? He goes, oh, look, he shows me the letter. And this boy responds just saying, I forgive you and I love you.
Oh, I love that. Little babies have better coping skills
And
than
I was
us.
just like, bro, like I have friends that I wasn't talking to for years because of a small incident, you know? And
Yeah.
I remember sharing that with my therapist as well. And, being able to have this moment reflected to me and realizing that one, what did I do for myself? Two, what did I do for my son? Three, what I did for the other boy. And four, what I did for the other boy's parents. And I think that was the beginning of me realizing that when I look in the mirror and I focus on the things that I can control, I can actually do a lot more for everyone around me.
Mhm.
And then I was like, all right, well, it's game on. Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's do this.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you for that realness because I think it's not like learning how to parent differently, show up differently. It's easy work. As you said, there's gonna be that self-talk that's like, well, you should have just been, or you're a bad parent because you didn't, right? But being able to like, I mean, in that moment, it sounds like alcohol was the best way to kind of numb like some of those hurts and pains, but that awareness of like, oh, wait a minute. Like, yes, it was hard for me, but look at the outcomes and like the results. There was forgiveness. There was like, I'm trying to be, teach my son to be compassionate and forgiving. Like, this is literally how they do it, right? And I always like, my heart always breaks for the amount of people who are like just like in the prison system, because I feel like,
Mm,
and I used to work with kids who were like on probation and juvenile hall, and it was always like, do you was there anybody who ever taught you how to deal and process this anger? Because that was messed up. You 100% right. That was 100% messed up. But now like your freedom came at the cost of like vengeance, right? Or like all of those abilities to be able to sit with the pain and the anger in ways that don't end up with you then getting like a severe
mm,
consequence. And I do think that we're learning that in this generation and maybe other people, but I feel like specifically in my generation of millennials, I feel like I work with a lot of people who are trying to parent differently. And it's that coming back down to like discipline, right? What does discipline look like? I think the way I grew up with it is discipline is a spanking, right? That's how you discipline. That's how you teach. And I think I also have, I mean, just being in mental health and because in community mental health, we had to teach like alternative ways to discipline, I was like, oh, like positive discipline. You teach them and you set boundaries and rules, and like the consequence matches the actions. I was like, this is like interesting stuff right here. Yeah, there was a lot of pushback. I won't say that it was like easily received either. It was like, why would I do that if I just, you know,
yeah.
they just learn
Yeah.
that way. But it's like, ooh, there is a difference between what immediately seems to stop a behavior and what we are teaching long term. And like that's important, right? Like I think we want quick fixes, but it's not always a quick fix when it comes to teaching values like forgiveness or
Mm.
compassion. Those aren't quick. You just get that character trait just because. Like,
You know,
no, you gotta practice it.
that is a beautiful point, and I couldn't agree more. I think in a time where we kind of want that instant gratification, and I think it's a time where we're provided with so much information so fast that I think the integration and the embodiment of a lot of this is what's missing.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
really being essentially being about it.
Yeah.
You brought up discipline and I think this is why men's work, why having support, why I love doing what I'm doing is because oftentimes the things that are preventing us from showing up as fathers has nothing to do with anything that we already know. And here's the thing: all the wisdom and all the medicine is within. It's
Hmm.
already there. It
Hmm.
already exists,
Hmm.
right? There's nothing. I always invite the folks that I work with is there's nothing to achieve that isn't already within you, right? Think about a marble statue, right? Like
Hmm.
you don't put things on it to create the
No.
statue. You chip away all the things that no longer serve it, right? And that's what
Hmm.
we get to do is I get to support you in taking those things away to realize that beautiful statue was there the whole freaking time,
Hmm. Yeah.
right?
Just, yeah.
Which is why I think, when you talk about accountability, and especially when it comes to fathers, when it comes to men, there's a conversation that gets brought up a lot about holding men accountable, right? And I think something that gets missed that's very important is that before we can hold men accountable, and I'm tying this into what you were talking about with the prison system, is that before we can talk about holding men accountable, it's important that we can hold men.
Mm, period.
It's important that we can hold men because those same men that have the issues with managing their anger, that have, struggles with coping with things that aren't alcohol, that aren't drugs, were once boys.
Mhm,
Were once boys that were put in these situations, and you said it perfectly earlier. That doesn't justify their behavior, but without that understanding, are we really? And the question, I guess, would be for anyone that's getting involved with community that is of service is: are we really working towards solving the issue, or are we just wanting a quick fix that makes us feel better?
mhm, mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Doing that internal work. That's real. Yeah. And I even think about that in the context of like, I hope that people from all backgrounds watch this episode, but if it happens to be like a postpartum mama, right? I think that that's one thing I had to learn myself just as a wife, as like a mom, is that my husband has emotions and feelings and needs as well, like just how I do, and bringing that compassion into the mix. And if I notice that he's feeling anxious about something, like be like, okay, obviously not doing the work for him, but at least like allowing that space of like, I'm not gonna be like, well, that's dumb to think that, or you're stupid for that. It's just like, oh, okay, like
Mm.
that makes sense, and I truly believe, and I preach this all the time, that that's why self-compassion is so important, because I do think as a culture we just don't have compassion, and we don't have very much self-compassion. So if you're not able to show up for your own stuff, it's really hard to show up authentically for other people's stuff. And I mean, it's just so valuable. So I
Yeah, it's a thousand
appreciate you.
percent. I think I truly believe that we're all mirrors and we're all projections, right? And the way that we treat others and we talk to others is very similar to the way that we approach ourselves, And
Hmm.
so to
Yeah.
your point, I think having that compassion. I mean, even something as simple as discipline. Like one thing that I always like to think of discipline is like thinking of a rules in a game,
Mm-hmm.
right? The discipline isn't there to live for the discipline. You don't play, uh, basketball focused on don't let the ball go out, don't double
Hmm.
dribble, don't right. That's not the focus of the game. The discipline, the rules are just there in order for you to play the game,
Hmm. Yeah.
right? And then there's this piece of what does that discipline look like? What do those rules look like, right? Well, the rule is that when I step on the court, everybody has to sit down and I'm the only one that gets to play on my feet, or
Hmm.
like I get to go outside of the lines and you guys have to stay in the lines, right? And then those are opportunities where then I had to start reflecting and realize like, man, some of these rules don't really, I could see why people don't want to play my game. I could
Hmm.
see why my son is having such a hard time connecting with me because this game is kind of one-sided,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
right?
100%.
And
Yeah.
like, what kind of game is this? Where I go, hey, once I start to play, we're playing soccer. I get to use my hands, but nobody else can. And it's like, what? I don't want to play that game.
Yeah. 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 I think the
So
new generation is getting a little bit of a rep sometimes because they're bold and out there, but I think that they're calling out what they're seeing, and they
yes,
are insightful, and they are going to challenge the systems that be. I think maybe in other generations, it's not like people have been challenging the systems and rules, but I do think that there is a new embodiment of like, why? And does that make sense? And hopefully they gear us towards a more like compassionate, accountable society where it's, okay, um, like I even think about it for schools, right? Like instead of detention immediately for a kid, I know that there are schools that are doing like restorative justice circles, and they're having more communication, and they're not just, you know, putting kids in a corner, but it's because I think we're starting to see like what's actually helping people heal, repair, restore relationships, not what just puts a band-aid on something and it's like, all right, no, that's
yeah,
still gonna keep oozing out. That band-aid did nothing. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we need some true healing, especially in our country. I think about it all the time as a therapist. I'm like, the world needs a therapist. Like our nation needs a therapist. There is so much wounds, there's so much hurt in our roots that it's like violence, division, like all the systemic stuff. that's not helping it at all. I think it's really, really hard to be compassionate because sometimes our like justice thing is like, well, they deserve this or they deserve that. And it's like, okay, well, have you ever messed up? How would you approach, how would you hope somebody approaches you when you mess up? There's a difference though, because not everyone is willing to like receive correction or to like have awareness of their mess ups. And that's when we could set the boundary and be like, okay, I'm not engaging in this conversation anymore, but it's like, are we willing to give our kids the benefit of the doubt, like our neighbors the benefit of the doubt, or are we like, no, they're just bad and they're bad human beings, so they deserve blah 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 blah, right? But
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, look, with that, because we can talk about this, I mean, for a long time, but I think what comes up for me is there's a very good book called Boys and Men that just talks about really the coexisting of supporting, empowering, and creating that equality for our women while also encouraging and supporting our boys and our men.
Mhm,
And one of the things it emphasizes is like it talks about the school systems and, even from a political standpoint that, red or blue, neither agenda is really interested in helping and encouraging our boys, right? At very
mhm,
extremes, they're using this same topic in a way that's beneficial to them, right?
yeah,
Whether it's, men need to be more like our grandparents and go back to that old school type of machismo patriarchal type of thinking, and then there's a very extreme on the other side of like our boys need to be more like our girls, right? Which at very extreme both can be very
mhm,
harmful.
mhm,
Ultimately, neither with the intention of actually supporting our boys with whatever it is. And school systems being one where, to your point, right? Like oftentimes, rather than building uh, an education system that allows for more play for our boys, right? That allows
mhm,
for more opportunity to let all that energy out. It's
mhm,
unfortunately more of we need you to stop, we need to suppress it, we need to change that, right? And it's a common theme, and I think something that has also helped me is this acceptance that while I'm not a fan of a lot of things that are happening in the world, and there are beautiful things that are happening, like you said, our youth is doing such a great job of speaking up and advocating that. Even as much as I love it, it still can be triggering when I don't have the capacity.
mhm,
It still is triggering. I think it's just data that I keep that I use to reflect and to see where it's coming from. Um, but I think something about being able to provide a space where our kids can develop, can grow, I think is something really much needed that is
mhm,
important. Like I said, I think uh, I'm a sucker of learning from kids because,
mhm,
again, going back to the somatic work is we can see the things that they're talking about. We can understand it. Like when my son tells me that he's not going to take, when I tell him he needs to hop in the shower, or I invite him to hop in the shower, and he says no. As a father, I'm proud because my son is advocating for himself.
mhm,
My body, though, wants to handle that situation very differently because I feel
mhm,
disrespected. I feel like I'm not being heard, right? I feel very angry. And so being able to have the awareness and the understanding of that is, I think, a game changer
mhm,
so that we don't continue to suppress them. Because with all that's going on in the world, at the end of the day, I think something very important is that our biggest influence starts at home,
mhm. Yep.
right? That I do have control. It's not even control; it's influence, right? Because as our kids get older, we lose control and we gain influence, which
Mhm,
is why when teenagers get to that developmental age where now they start thinking for themselves, they start putting the pieces together, right? Just
mhm.
like I was like, you're telling me soda's bad for me, but I see you drinking it all day, every day, right? So
Mhm,
if this is so bad for you, why are you doing it? And so to your point, when they get to that age where they start thinking for themselves, they'll call things out. And if we don't have the capacity to accept that and to invite that in, then we'll shut it down for as long as we can.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right?
That reminds me of the importance of not being offended by like critical thinking, by our kids
Mm.
having critical thinking. Because I do think people get offended when it's like, especially the old, like the more traditional view of like, because somebody is an elder, like 100% of what they say is right and you respect it. I think we're
Mm.
starting to think like, oh, older people also make mistakes and they're also shaped by their own values and experiences. So maybe I don't have the same values. So maybe it doesn't apply for me in this way, right? But it can be really triggering if like your child says like, why, and be like, okay, they're not being disrespectful. They're literally just being curious. Like they have a question. And
I love that.
I wouldn't want, like, for example, I'm raising a daughter. I don't want her to be raised to just be obedient to authority just because they have a badge or a name. And I know that's like controversial to some people still. It's like I want her to be able to like, ooh, that feels off the way you said that, or your posture, or it's like I'm gonna talk to my mom, I'm gonna talk to like a trusted adult. Like obedience just because authority is not something I value. Um, and it's just like sorry, not sorry, right? Because I've seen the horrors that happens when little girls just obey some older man. I'm like, I'm not willing. Nope, not my daughter.
Yep.
She's gonna be advocating, you know?
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
like that means that when I'm parenting her, she's gonna sometimes ask me questions. And the because I said so is not going to be a valid parenting tool that I hope to pass on, right? Like it's just maybe sometimes I want to feel like it because I feel like it all the time, but it's like that's not necessarily what I want her to think just because an older person said so. That's law.
Yeah. A
Um,
1000%. And look at with the spanking thing, like for me at originally it was just I just didn't feel good. It just didn't feel right. I felt really guilty for hitting my kid, even though I felt like it was the only thing I could do. Because I thought I had two choices. Either one is I'm, this dictator that hits him and is on his ass, but like is gonna be a good father because I'm gonna raise a good kid, right? Or two is I just let everything be and I become very passive, and then my kid's just gonna run wild with no structure. I thought those
yeah.
were the only two options, right? I
Hmm.
didn't know that there was authoritative mindsets where I get to lead, right? Where,
Hmm.
and look, I'll never argue that spanking doesn't work for that moment.
Hmm.
To say that, okay, if I spank my kid, I'll get what I need. I won't argue with you because you're right. The
Hmm.
question is at what cost,
Hmm.
right? Implementing the fear, losing trust with your children. Like you said, looking at it from an even deeper level. When we talk about authority and folks that take advantage of their authority
Hmm.
and wanting our children to be able to advocate and speak up against that authority while at the same time suppressing and physically beating them at home. And I
Yeah.
realized I was doing the work for them.
Oof.
So there's also this resistance and this retaliation, this rebellion within me that also doesn't do it, not only because of the father that I'm wanting to be, but also the bigger system of like, I'm not doing your job for you. My son is going to be so empowered and have so much love at home that he's going to say, nah, I'm not dealing with that,
Yeah.
you know?
That's a good point. Yeah, because I think I've heard a lot like I'm preparing them for the real world, quote unquote, right?
Right.
And it's like I hear you because maybe the real world is kind of violent. It will
Yeah.
resort to hitting and abuse, but I don't want that to be the norm that my daughter sees. Like, I deserve to get hit if blank, blank,
Mm,
blank, right? Whereas, like, I can help her form a self-view. And all of us, I think, with our kids, of like, love does not include violence. Yeah. Or if
thousand
someone
percent.
loves me, their actions will show like love is patient, love is kind. Especially as a Christian woman, I'm like, it always kind of trigs me a little bit when people use like the Bible out of context because I'm like, y'all saw how Jesus walked? He wasn't punching, stabbing. I don't know what to tell y'all. Read the Bible, but you know what I mean? Like there is, I don't know, like a strength in instilling security and safety and safe attachment and be like, you can always come to me. Even if you think I'm gonna be mad at you, I will always be a safe space for you. And that's like something I have to work on, right? Like, how do I be a safe space? But it is like a whole mindset shift. You have to really step back from the culture you're swimming in, and being like, all
Yeah.
right, is this healthy? I know I've been swimming in this, and generations before me have been swimming in this, and other people are still drinking the Kool-Aid of this, but is this how I want to show up and parent? And that doesn't mean everyone's going to agree with you. People are going to disagree with your parenting styles, and it's just like, well, it's aligned with my values. And if it
Yeah.
offends you, I'm sorry, not sorry. Like my child is under my like guidance, Like it's my job to guide her. So you guide your child how you want. I'm gonna guide my child how I want to see community, and we're just gonna try our best. You know what I mean?
That's it.
But
Keep
yeah,
showing up.
yeah, exactly. And there's such a spectrum, right? Like you said, of parenting styles. We won't dive into it, but I remember hearing that, like, there's the permissive on this side and the authoritarian on this side. And it's like neither are effective. It's really that authoritative, kind and firm that we're hoping for. But
Yeah.
that's a skill set too, right?
Yeah.
Um,
And that's I mean, ultimately, like I said, that's what I get to. assist and support fathers with. And I think the best way I can describe it, especially what helped me when I first started and was having a hard time understanding that, is like because work was such a big part of my identity, right? It's like, what do you do? And it was like I wouldn't say I bring love into this space. I make people smile. It was my title of my work. And so one thing that really helped me to bring clarity is I've worked for bosses that had to remind me every day they were my boss, right? And then I've
Mhm.
worked for bosses that not once mentioned their title, and I already knew that they were the
Mhm.
ones in charge, and I
Mhm.
respected them, right?
Mhm.
And I allowed myself to be led, and I was also, more importantly, I was given power,
Mhm.
right?
Yes.
I've worked for individuals like that, and so that is that authoritative of I don't need to tell you I'm your dad every day. I don't need to remind you that I run the show,
Mhm.
right? Instead, I get to use this influence to lead you, to show you things, to connect with you, and also inviting myself to learn from you,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
What are you teaching me in those moments? Like you said, like, wow, my son is so resilient. He drops something, makes a mistake, and then he's laughing 2 minutes later. And I'm like, bro,
Mhm.
that takes me weeks to get over sometimes, right? And there's so much to learn in that. So I think that has really helped shift the mindset with a lot of the dads that I worked with is what are our children here to teach us and how do we protect them and cherish them in a way that we can continue to learn from them, right? Seeing those moments where we get triggered as invitations, like those are invitations that for us, if our body is bringing that up, it's for a reason.
Mhm. Yes. Yeah. We have so many unhealed parts of us that triggers is that, right? It's just a little sign of like, oop, there's still a wound somewhere or a human emotion somewhere that's valid. It's like requires some attention. I know we're kind of wrapping up, but I mean, all of this has been so meaningful. I did want to tie it back a little bit to the postpartum papa. So if I guess like my question is, what would you share with like a a new or soon to be new father out there as they're beginning this journey?
You know, first off, congratulations.
Yeah.
uh, hope you're doing well. Definitely want to invite you to give yourself grace. It's definitely a huge shift. There's a lot of grief that comes with that. There's an identity change that's occurring, whether we see it and feel it or not. And so, just inviting you to take a deep breath, give yourself some grace. You're already showing up, you're already present. And, I can tell you when my son was born, I wasn't even thinking about any of this stuff. So I always tell dads the fact that you're thinking about it, the fact that you even feel a little bit of guilt because you want to be a better father is is already such a huge win, right? So giving yourself that grace. And when you're ready, I think the invitation is, as you mentioned at the beginning, is sitting down and really asking yourself, what kind of father do I want to be? What are things based on the men that I've had in my life, present or not, they've shaped us.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
I've got all kinds of daddy issues.
Hmm.
And so based off of that, what kind of father do I want to be? What are some things that I want to let go, and what are the new things that I want to bring to the table? And let that be your compass into everything that you do moving forward. And inviting you to seek community, seek support. Oftentimes we don't need answers. We just need a space where I can go, oh, you were dealing with that too? Oh my gosh, I thought I was the only one freaking out. No, it's so valid.
Hmm.
It's so valid.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. Not isolating ourselves. And I think that's the cool thing, like you mentioned, like fathers are showing up in new and different ways. I mean, even within the postpartum like world, I've seen like new dad groups show up, or like I think there was like a daddy and me like stroller walk that was like around my neighborhood. I was like, y'all gonna make me cry. That just makes my heart so happy because of like the generational wounds I know, like I've experienced because of probably the pressures my father felt and other people's fathers. Like I don't think that most men will go into a relationship being like, I'm not gonna have contact with my child after they're 2 or 3. Like
Mm.
but the statistics are alarming, and it's heartbreaking for the whole family. So I know that there's a lot of single moms out there, some single fathers out there, and there's always there's always the ability to, even if things don't work out with your partner, right, for some reason or another, that doesn't mean you still can't have a relationship with your child. Not giving that papa power away, like that influence, like you said, it's so important, but it may require internal work. So in addition to, so I know you had access therapy, but I know you provide coaching, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So can you share a little bit, just like if there's somebody who is hoping to get a little more support, we're like, yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to do this father thing and just want to talk to someone. Where would you point them to? How can they be in
Yeah.
touch with you?
Yeah, so we have two things right now. One of them being is just one-on-one coaching support. Think of it as building a home. So we get to essentially demo that home, right? Then we get to look at the materials that have been sitting there, figure out which ones are still good, which ones align with us, how, whatever that, giving you the clarity of whatever you want your home to look like, and then building a solid foundation off of that. Once you get to do that, then the house gets put together, and then you get to live in it, and then you get to remodel it, right? Or you get to change out different rooms. You get to do whatever it is. And so I get to support you on figuring those things out for yourself as a coach, as a father, as a man. And then also, my personal favorite as well is I'm a big advocate in nature. I think nature has also given us everything that we need to learn. Nature's always been around. We are nature. And I also think that you sit in nature long enough and it'll speak to you. It'll teach you things. And so this is for my folks in Southern California. I do a Dads in the Wild. So we get together once a month. It's about a 2 hour hangout. We show up in the morning, we make some coffee out in nature, and then we just go for a stroll. It's all ages. We're not there for pace. We're just there for connection, and we really get to. It's really beautiful to see how much not only do we get to learn from each other, but again, how much we learn from the kids. I mean, children are resilient. It goes back to, as you mentioned, overprotecting. The cool thing about nature is that you get to bring them into a space where there's a nature to nurture mindset where they can be pushed and they can be challenged without the adversity that we faced when we were growing up, right? Removing all the stuff that maybe wasn't the most helpful and that came with a lot of weight and a lot of things that we now feel responsible for carrying, and really just providing a space that says, here, you can learn here, whether it's creativity, whether it's kids supporting each other, whether it's getting wet and being upset and then moving forward from it, and all of a sudden now they're throwing themselves in the water, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
those are all little lessons that we get to share. And so yeah, you can reach me at the modern macho one at gmail.com. I'm also on Instagram at the modern macho. And then we have the website as well that just mainly shows a lot of the podcast information we had before. Like I said, me and my best friend had the podcast. We rounded up a bunch of therapists and Reiki masters and just specialists in all fields. And we just said, hey, man, the world I come from, none of this exists. Like I said, I'm just talking smack and drinking beers all the time when I was younger. So I was like, I'm
Mm-hmm.
new to all of this, but I want to learn. And so
Mm-hmm.
we just brought them on and we just talked to them and learned from them and received medicine from them. So, I mean, if that's the season that you're into, we'd definitely invite you to go to the website, www.themodernmacho.com. We have links in there. There's YouTube videos all over it. We're on Spotify, YouTube, and here to be a service.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah, I think it's so important. I feel like, especially when it comes to like mental health support or just like awareness, I think knowing that like your next step, even though I'm a big proponent of therapy, your next step doesn't have to look like therapy, right? It could
Mm,
look like I'm going to listen to this podcast. I'm going to learn this resource. Maybe I'll try coaching and see like just some foundational things around my current life. And then maybe in coaching, you realize like, oh, there are some deep traumas, then it's like, okay, maybe that's another thing that I do in the future. But it's really just about taking that baby step, or even like, right, the Dads in the Wild, that's my first step. Or you know what I mean? Like that's a really cool way to kind of just get exposure to what does healing look like. It doesn't always have to be this like you know, I found out I want to do things differently, immediate therapy. Though that
yeah,
for some people that is their path, but not everybody. So, thank you for bringing awareness to like different modalities. I also want to shout out that you're going to be supporting one of my friends, Crystal, in doing a virtual carne asadas. So, more information on that. I believe by the time this comes out, it'll be closer to it happening. It'll come out in June. So more on that. That'll be like a space for men, fathers to just come together virtually to it. Like you mentioned, community and just knowing I'm not the only one doing this is so healing. It's so therapeutic. I honestly, sometimes even when I started my therapy practice in postpartum, I immediately, after talking to like my first four clients, I was like, I need to do something community based because all of these mamas are saying that they're the worst mom because they feel this, and I
Mm.
need them to show up and be like, you're not the worst mom because I also, and just be like, we're all going. And I was the therapist being like, girl, me too, because I was, a new
Yeah.
mom. So just knowing that there's so many ways to heal. So thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your space, your energy, your wisdom with us. Is there anything else you want to just share before we hop off?
No, just
No?
thanking you for the time, for sharing your medicine, for listening, and for everything that you shared as well. It's truly an honor to have this conversation.
Yay. Well, I appreciate you. It's a collective healing, right? Like from coast to coast, nation to nation. We just gotta try to be the grounded people, right? The people who are
Mm.
grounded in values, especially in a world that will uproot you and throw you all over the place, being like, no, I know what my values are. And just spreading that like that, I think could work miracles in our world. Um, there's not enough people living from that space. So I feel like if you are, take care of yourself so that you can continue to pour out authentically. So thank you so much, Juan Carlos. Y'all go make sure to follow at the Modern Macho. Visit if you are a mama, definitely go share this. If you have a male partner in your life, go ahead and send that way. But y'all take care. Bye. Thank you for joining me on the Millennial Thermom podcast. If today's episode resonated with you, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend. For more mental health education, encouragement, and grounded motherhood resources, follow Millennial Thermom on Instagram and YouTube, and download the free Grounded Motherhood Guide at groundedmotherhood.com. You can also explore the Motherhood Escuelita, my poetry reflection journals, community events, one-on-one support, and more. Until next time, stay grounded, rooted in compassion, and remember, you don't have to navigate this journey alone. With love, Millennial Thermom.